Thank you for staying with Good Morning Kenya. This is The Viewpoint. And before we went on a break, we were talking about matters, housing, and especially regarding the houses or settlements that have been built along riparian land. And Dr. Nyamongo, someone was arguing, is it a case of sacred cows where people in the informal settlements who have built on riparian lands are being, quote unquote, dealt with first, as opposed to the cases of big buildings in upmarket areas?
Okay, I may not ascertain the notion, but if there are people building houses on riparian lands, whether informal or formal, then they should be dealt with accordingly, legally, without partiality. Another thing, if you look at very keenly, those Kenyans who are living in informal sectors, they tend to misbehave, quote unquote. Unlike those living in the former what? Settlement. When you look at citizenship, citizenship is that status of a citizen with the rights and the duties. Not only rights, with the rights and the duties. So a citizen has rights, at the same time, a citizen has what? Duties. There is that social force that binds each individual in Kenya to act in a manner that corresponds with the national values and the principles of governance for harmonious relations. So let me give you an example. Sometimes back, we had a gas leakage pipeline at Mukuru Gwanjenga, and many people lost lives. Many people were told to move away from that instance, but they refused. The result was many Kenyans lost lives. Remember the case of Sajangwan. Most Kenyans do not know their duties as a Kenyan. They think of their rights from the government. We need to sit down and realize that as a people, individuals, we families, we individuals, we the communities, wherever we live, we have that responsibility to guard ourselves in a manner that corresponds with the objects and the purposes of the Constitution, because the Constitution is what defines us. The law is what defines us. If we live outside the law, then we will become a banana republic. So when you insinuate or allude that the government has been showing partiality in informal settlement than formal settlement, then it's like now you are encouraging those in the informal settlement to continue behaving the way they are behaving. We must have that trait of sincere and steadfast fixed of purpose if we are to help our people. So our leaders and that people should come down and sit and realize that if this is a riparian land, then the chief, the administration with the local arrangements should come up with what? With the government policies. This is what the government says. I was somewhere, and then a person asked me, is it in order for the CS for Education to announce, to issue a statement that the schools will be reopening on the 6th? Then the president comes immediately after, then postpones indefinitely. I told them that is in order, because what we are to follow is the president is what? Decree. You know, the president has that right or power under Article 1 to give orders and make the decisions. And the president sits with the National Security Council, where he is informed. There is some data or information that the president gets very raw that he cannot display to the public, but he uses them to act in accordance to serve the people. So one was asking that, is the president confusing what the CS, his own CS was doing. And I was telling them, this is what the government says. The president is the supreme what? Is the head of state. And let the people of Kenya know that we may not have a perfect president, but this is the right president for us. Because when you see such a calamity, then the president goes ahead maybe to encourage parents to send their children to school. Yeah. And he knows very well that some schools even have been submerged completely. It will not be in accordance with the Constitution. The president is there to respect, uphold, and safeguard the sovereignty of the people, the sovereignty of the Constitution, and the rights and the responsibilities of all Kenyans. Yes.
All right. Let's move on now. And
I think before you move on, you asked about the riparian housing.
Yes.
It's good I also make a comment on the same.
Yes.
When President Kibaki took over the leadership of this country, there was a need to reconfigure our infrastructure. The current Mombasa Highway was one lane.
Yes.
It was not a dual road, because on both sides, all the land, all the road land had been allotted for different constructions and different investments. The same case on Thika Superhighway. So over time, we engaged as a country in criminal action overloading road lands for private development. And when all those infrastructure were brought down, of course, Kenyans were very emotional. But today, we now appreciate the need of open and clear highways, to the extent that the infrastructure alone in the city and around the city and the metropolis, in terms of the dual highways, is a masterpiece in the continent. It's what gives this country image that when we're here, it's like you are in one of the most developed economies in the world. So we appreciate, if we didn't bring down those buildings, if we extended unnecessary benevolence to criminal action of annexing land on our highways, we would not be having these roads today. The same case with the riparian ecosystem. Riparian ecosystem is protected in law. And so any building, whether it is a slum or a superstructure owned by the quote-unquote, the untouchables in this country, should be criminalized and brought down without exception. So when you talk of evicting people from riparian ecosystem, it should not exclude anybody. It should not favor others and protect others. If it is getting out of the riparian ecosystem, let everybody be criminalized. Even government entities. If there are government buildings on the riparian ecosystems, they should all be brought down. And we criminalize any activity within the width and the length of riparian ecosystem. And those are entities where we can grow trees and regenerate our natural vegetation within those entities. I've visited Geneva many times, and the rivers passing through Geneva are so clean with pure water that you can drink directly without even purification. But you can't do this here. We can't do this. It's nasty. We've polluted. We are talking about pollution and settlement along the riparian ecosystem. So it is time we use our laws to criminalize. And law has no exception. The moment we violate a law with impunity as a country, and Kenya has been credited as a country that has developed the best laws, but we don't enforce them. So for now, Mr. President, without exception, can you lead the way you are leading our government to see that we enforce all these legislation and reclaim our riparian ecosystem, even as we seek to plant 15 million trees, as we seek to restore our environment. Let us do it through legislation.
Okay.
And I urge all other political players not to politicize
Yes.
very sensitive matters of this nature. This is an item that all Kenyans of different political shades should come together on matters of the rule of law, while at the same time, if there are Kenyans who are victims of allotment of land in those riparian ecosystems, then they must be compensated. Bring down the building and compensate. If a building is within the city of Nairobi, then it must have been approved by City Hall. So City Hall must take responsibility and compensate owners of those buildings if they were allotted unknowingly by the City Council. So the City Council must bear responsibility.
Yes.
So things to do with insurance and compensation, who takes responsibility? It is that city, the owners of that city.
Yeah.
Because, and that brings us now to the state of Nairobi, for example. In the face of these floods and all these things we are seeing, it tells us about how poorly we've managed the city of Nairobi over the years. If we are talking about coming up with tall, high-rise buildings, we should be talking about strengthening the drainage infrastructure system, strengthening the road network, and running the city in an orderly manner.
Yes.
Let us have clean cities. This is a lesson that we've learned.
Thank you. Now, there's a story on page 4, and this actually is something you can authoritatively speak about, concerns education. Public schools still playing catch-up in online class uptake. Situation exposes a class divide between children from humble backgrounds and those from well-off families. The indefinite postponement of the reopening of schools has exposed a wide class divide where children from humble backgrounds and who majorly attend public schools are going without learning as their counterparts from well-to-do families attend classes. Before I come to you, Bwana Sossion, Mr. Nyamongo, what is your take on this? Public schools still playing catch-up in online class uptake?
Yeah, this was expected.
Yes.
Because most of those parents who have their children in public schools, for lack of a better word, they may be poor.
Yes.
Their resources to encourage or to support their schooling is meager.
Yeah.
So when you find the others who have their children in private schools, then they have resources. So things like floodings, like now, they do not affect those children who come from big families, because the parents have sophisticated items, like now laptops, internet, where they can access what? Education or learning materials. Yes. But a child from Mangaisecha, may not be able to do what? Yes. Access these education materials from the internet. So this is what we say, that if it continues like this, then we will have partiality. Some children are going to access continuing education, while others, their education will be what? Still or stagnant. So they may not catch up later on. So the government then ought to find out ways. Maybe in one school, the principal may organize for a Zoom and release materials for the children. Maybe through their head of departments. Yeah, at least they should do something.
But also, in some schools, that infrastructure may not be there. What then? What now happens? That level of infrastructure may not be there.
Okay, as Honorable Sossion said, then signs are here to show us what to do next. Maybe we are facing these floods for us to learn, and in particular for the Minister of Education to come up now with what? Some measures, because there are technocrats there, the CS is there, the PS is there, and other people TSCs, is there everybody, teachers, parents, to sit down and see what if next the floods appear. How are these children going to be supported until they come again back to school again?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Sossion, I'd want to hear your views on that. And also here, the chairman of the Kenya Secondary Schools Heads Association, Willy Kuria, has called for partial reopening of schools to alleviate a crisis. I'd love to hear your views on both issues.
Now, I'll give my contribution on the basis of equity.
Yes.
Education must be equitably delivered. Anything that promotes inequality must be treated with a lot of caution.
Yeah.
Kenya is a signatory to SDG 4 of education, and its overarching call is towards equitable quality education for all. Equitable quality, and the item quality we negotiated for all. So that means we cannot exacerbate inequality by using a model. The moment you use a mode of learning that can only be accessed by a few,
yes,
then that is a wrong mode of delivering education. I believe trying to fight the public school system by glorifying ICT infrastructure, which is only available to the top class families, not even the middle class.
Yes.
Top class families is a total mistake.
Yeah.
Today, I celebrate public schools. These doctors we see in Kenya, these ones who are demonstrating in the streets, those are products of public schools.
Yes.
The best lawyers we have around, including Nyamongo here,
Yes.
I'm sure these are products of public schools. The media staff that we see in media houses, including you,
Yes.
these are products of public schools. Wilson Sossion is a product of public schools.
Yeah.
I never went through premium private schools with swimming pools and with choppers and the rest. I think that is assigning education what is not necessary. Learning, and we have argued and we've campaigned all over the world. I was part of that campaign while in that space.
Yes.
True learning is the physical presence of a teacher with learners in class.
Yeah.
Anything outside that is deception. It is deception.
Yes.
So promoting and hyping that we can have an alternative of using technology to deliver teaching and learning to young learners is a mistake. It cannot work in Kenya.
Yeah.
Because number one, we even cannot equip our schools with adequate ICT infrastructure.
Yes.
If we can't equip our schools, can you equip our poor homes? Let's take, for example, these households that we are evicting from riparians in Mukuru Kwanjenga and several others. We've seen floods in River Nyando, homes submerged, and the children are sitting on funny places. What time are you talking about delivering learning through technology? It is only a madman who can think in that mode. And these adjutants of technology are business interest groups who want to force ICT infrastructure as a relevant mode that can be used to deliver teaching and learning. And therefore, these are business expansionists. That cannot work. If children are not in school, they can either choose to read or not, and they should not be forced. If the schools are closed, then they are closed. The curriculum should remain suspended and unoperational. The children then can decide whether those who have IT, they can use IT, those who have books, they can use the books. And the statement by my respectful friend, Chairman Kenya Secondary School, Heads Association, partial opening. This one creates inequality. Whom are you going to open for and whom are you not?
Actually, I was going to
think
ask,
what we are going to do now, what the president, and the president is properly advised, that many schools, majority of the schools, are not ready for reopening. Even after the rain subsides, we need a rapid inspection and assessment of all schools to check the infrastructure. the facilities that we know are gone now in many schools, particularly in cotton soil areas of the country, which forms most part of the country. The sanitation system have collapsed. There are no toilets. And so that needs to be addressed. Are we going to send our children to areas that will be prone to cholera? With these high intensity rains, we expect outbreak of very unique diseases, including cholera. Are we going to risk to send our students to schools that do not meet the minimum threshold of the standards of Ministry of Public Health? I think every school, before reopening, must be inspected and assessed to be ready for resumption of learning by the Ministry of Health. We must have certificates of clearance for every public school.
And some schools
for purposes of protecting, because it defeats a lot of sense. It defeats sense to postpone closure of schools so that we can save lives from floods. And then we release again children to very dangerous. And then you see our schools are congested.
Yes.
So the issue of sanitation and inspection and certifying of our schools should be number one item. And this is where Machogu and Nakumicha, the two ministers, should not be resting now. That process should be in place. So that then, I expect Kenya Secondary School Aids Association, I expect unions to be now talking about measures of safe reopening of schools. It goes beyond partial opening. It goes beyond, because you look at the lowland areas like Kano, for example. Nyakach area and the rest of the country. You can see schools are submerged, and we expect infrastructure to have gone down. And the president has said government has committed 1 billion shillings to rehabilitate all that. So we want this money to be translated into real work that ensures that all schools are brought back to form. Now, in all those schools, if we are talking about boarding schools, for example, many secondary schools, at least 28% of secondary school students are boarders. And now we are talking about food problems, food shortage, and all that. Are we sure that even the food supply is steady and good enough to sustain these students? So we must get, and I'm telling Kuria and the union officials, right now you must swing into action and generate competent advisories to government on safe reopening of schools for all learners, not some. So let us never talk of some. Anything about some is inequality. If it is about some in reopening, some in technology, some, that is inequality. I don't stand there. Let's talk about how we can have the child in the slum of Kibera, the child in the remote parts of northern Kenya, the child in the flooded regions of Kisumu County, the child in Tana River, in Garissa, and the child in Mai Mahiu. How can they all resume schools equitably and access learning qualitatively on the same slate?
Will we see a case of the school calendar overstretching, or it will remain the same?
No, the school calendar, this one is not as serious as COVID. COVID, schools were closed from March to September. That indeed was a very long period. This one, we are only out of the school calendar by 2 weeks. And these rains are not here with us forever. We are sure the weathermen are projecting that by end of May there will be no rains. And so we expect the intensity towards that end of May to keep reducing. So even in the coming days, with the collapse of Hidaya, after the collapse of Hurricane Hidaya, I am sure the rains from the weathermen may reduce in terms of intensity, and that will give avenues for normalization and rehabilitation of schools and many things. So according to me, I'll see schools being reopened. We may only lose about 3 weeks, 4 weeks on a maximum, or even if it were 5 weeks on a maximum, then those 5 weeks, which is an instructional period, can be spread towards end of second term and also towards end of third term. there is nothing wrong with having parallel national exams being conducted while teaching and learning continues at the same time. We've done it over the years, and that the country can prepare itself. And we need to normalize our national exams so that it doesn't look like we convert our schools into military no-go zones where candidates only, security officers, and a few designated examiners are running exams. We need to run our exams honestly, in an honest environment, where students can take their exams, the candidature, while the rest of the students can also undertake their normal learning. There will be nothing wrong. If we stretch learning into a few weeks into November, and if need be early December, then take a break. I don't think this one is going to affect the school calendar. The school calendar is not cast in stone. It has to be reorganized. And of course, from these climatic circumstances, then it means maybe we must rethink. The long holiday in future should be around the month of April, where there are long rains that can persist into May. Then probably we can take a full 1.5 months or 2 months holiday from end of March to mid-May. Then the rest of the period of the year. What is wrong with running teaching and learning up to even 20th of December? There's nothing wrong, because those are seasons that are open. Let's look at what happens in the global north. During winter, when you can't do anything in the field, all schools are in session during winter. The moment it is summer, all schools are closed. Why? Because that is when families, they go out to the field to do agricultural work and other things. So it is time we design our education calendar to fit the climatic circumstances in this country.
Thank you. Now, on the first page of the Star, there's tough questions for Linturi in ejection bid. Why, for instance, did he direct KEL Chemicals to read a statement authored by NCPB? That story, you will find it on page 4 and 5 of the Star newspaper. Linturi becomes the first cabinet secretary in President William Ruto's cabinet to face impeachment that threatens to end his career. Dr. Nyamongo, what is your views on this matter?
Okay, before I come to Linturi, allow me to state that I'm so impressed with the Honorable Sossion in regard on how he contemplates matters with education. In point of fact, Honorable Sossion is one of those Kenyans who is endowed with the capacity to reason, especially in regard to education matters. And I should ask the President, the Honorable President, instead of appointing Honorable Sossion as CAS for tourism, in fact, he should be CAS for education. He has that strong emotion of regard and affection for education. You can see the passion for the teachers, the passion for the parents, the passion for the children, the passion for students, the passion for pupils. Okay, to the matter of Linturi, it was a resolution passed by the National Assembly. When you look at Article 152, Sub-Article 2, because that is the bone of contention, the Constitution speaks boldly that the President shall nominate and, with the approval of the National Assembly, appoint cabinet secretaries. Full stop. Now, when it comes to dismissal, then the same process of nominating and appointing takes place. When you look at Uhuru Kenyatta and the former regime of Jubilee, some ministers, some cabinet secretaries were dismissed illegally. Now, when you see the case of Linturi, Linturi now is going to be dismissed legally because the National Assembly approved his what? Nomination. And then the President appointed him. Now, if there is any allegation of gross violation of the Constitution or another misconduct as far as his duties of the state office is concerned, then the right procedure is to be taken to the National Assembly by a resolution, a majority of a resolution, which has been made. Now, there is that now the 11-member committee, which is now what? Investigating further. Those allegations, if they are going to be found to be substantiated, then the national speaker, I mean, the national speaker again should do what? Invite the members of parliament to approve what? What the committee has said, as envisaged. And if it finds that the allegations are then substantiated, then the president now is going to dismiss who? The cabinet secretary.
Your views as we come to a close.
Yeah, but first, a disclaimer. Of course, all Kenyans are entitled to their own opinions, including Nyamongo. I don't dispute. My experience in education is deep, and not just deep. Practical. Both as an exemplary classroom teacher with unmatched records of performance, and having worked in the trade union movement, I've been involved in global campaigns for quality public education. And I was at the UN on 22nd of March 2015 to give an intervention on targets and indicators on SDG 4 on behalf of the teachers of the world. I've campaigned all over the world. I've stepped in every continent. And therefore, I've got international experience. But then, as to who is appointed to where in any government, that's the discretion of appointing authority. If I'm appointed to run the Ministry of Sanitation and Drainage Systems in the Republic, it's a job you have been given. I will do it. So I don't need to get into that.
Out of time,
Yes. But if I get to the other question that you have raised, what was it?
Regarding Linturi's program.
Linturi's, Linturi's matter. Let the institutions work. Constitution of Kenya 2010 created institutions. It gives powers to parliament. The powers of the president were withdrawn because the president could appoint and fire and could even preserve a corrupt minister in government. But now the constitution doesn't allow that. And even the president is subject to impeachment. We can impeach nobody cannot be impeached in this country. Everybody can be impeached. And the impeachment is based on the facts of law, violation of the constitution and the law. He's a lawyer, and I think the process that is being undertaken in parliament is not new, it's not exceptional. And I would like to say, as an insider of Kenya Kwanza,
as we close,
I don't think it is a philosophy of Kenya Kwanza to protect wrong things. That is not the philosophy.
Thank you.
The thing is, if you are doing wrong things, ship out and don't complain.
Thank you.
And I think Kenya Kwanza is out to deliver on its manifesto and on the main pillars. So you are given a fair process. So Linturi has been given a fair process through parliament, and a report will be tabled. If that report will vindicate him, he will keep his job. And we'll know the criminals who are distributing fake fertilizers. The criminals who are distributing fake fertilizers must be brought to book, because those ones, they are threat to peace, they are threat to the food security of this country. And so I believe Parliament, as an institution that is given powers, will be able to dig and get to the bottom of it.
Thank you.
Whoever is responsible, whether Linturi or anybody, go and face justice and don't complain.
Sawa. Thank you, Honorable Wilson Sossion and Dr. Naftali Nyamongo joining us on The Viewpoint, talking about matters state of the country. And this is where we wrap matters on this first segment of Good Morning Kenya. Don't go too far. Vivian will be right back with more. Good morning.